yeah, basically everybody's gonna talk about their current projects for a few minutes. And then at the end, I would love to open it up to a Q&A, and I might break in and have a few questions myself. So we are gonna start with Audrey T Williams. Audrey is an oral storyteller, an activist, writer, and poet based in Oakland, California. She holds an MFA from CCA and is in the board of directors at the Oakland Asian Cultural Center. Audrey wears many hats. In addition to her social justice work, Audrey writes, performs, and podcasts creative nonfiction in the form of personal narratives, and her current projects focus on healing through storytelling and her childhood in rural North Carolina in a loving multicultural family. Audrey's also working on several Afro surreal short stories. The working title for her memoir practice is, Audrey, is it Of Chutney and Chitlins or just Chutney and Chitlins? I've seen it two different ways.
It's Of Chutney and Chitlins.
Okay.
Multicultural family memoir.
Yep. Cool. All right, great. And so Audrey's got a poem for us, and then she's going to talk about Ancestral Futures, which is a nonprofit speculative literary art and educational organization, which amplifies the writing of emerging and established speculative storytellers who identify as Black, Indigenous, or people of color. Okay, so Audrey, please take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. So I just wanted to read a quick note first. I'm going to share one poem. And I grew up on the coast of North Carolina, and we have a really big swamp there, the Great Dismal Swamp. So in case people aren't familiar with that, I just wanted to share a quick blurb. So close to where I grew up, the Great Dismal Swamp runs across, oh, I can't talk, sorry. The Great Dismal Swamp runs along the western side of Highway 17, just north of Elizabeth City and further north across the Virginia border to the Chesapeake Bay. This swamp plays a huge role in the history of American slavery, as runaway slaves such as Nat Turner and Dred Scott sought their personal safety and liberation by hiding and living in swamps for extended periods of time. This poem is a tribute to Langston Hughes. The last line is directly inspired by his poem, The Negro Speaks of Rivers. And with that, I will share my screen.
I'm saturated sponge of land, soaking up all where the waters seep. I'm a lazy lift of alligator eyelid, slow to rouse from dark, dank sleep. I'm drawled out groan of lily pad protest, as fat bullfrogs slowly leap. I'm squelch of soil under feet that never rush, always creep. I'm overflow of displaced sorrow, death visits often, always on the leap. I'm stretched wide from Carolina's Cape Fear up north to Virginia's Chesapeake. I'm your first stop, only chance, last resort to escape the master's keep. I've lost count of the bodies I hold, but each one housed a soul grown deep.
All right.
Oh, lovely.
Thank you for listening. So on that note, that's just one of the pieces that the nonprofit that Jill mentioned, Ancestral Futures Press, I've co-founded that just earlier this year with my colleague Jasmine Wade. And the purpose of that is to really take our writing to the next level. We've been a part of a group called the Afro Surreal Writers Workshop of Oakland for the past 5 years. And we work closely with some of the local partners. Nomadic Press in Oakland has been really supportive of us, and also the Association of Black and Brown Writers. And so we realized that over these years, we've all been critiquing each other and working on stories, and we have a collection from 11 of our local writers, and we've pulled together a multi-genre speculative anthology. And so I just want to quickly share that. Let's see, you can do a screenshot of that. So here's our book cover. Another amazing local artist, Alan Clark, he's working on stories. He's basically a graphic novelist, but he's designed our cover. And so just quickly, we're moving into a full-blown official Indiegogo campaign to get some fundraising behind this project. But the thing that's really different about this is that it's not your typical speculative anthology. It doesn't start with, you know, one kind of story and stay sort of, you know, the same throughout. We begin with actually an academic book review from our founder, Rochelle Spencer. She founded the Afro-Surreal Workshop in 2015. And then we go into some reprints of short stories from some of our more established local writers. We've got a story from Jasmine Wade that was published in Drunken Boat about vampires. And we've got, you know, a couple of local English teachers. Vernon Keeve, he's known locally as a poet, but he's actually sent us his first ever prose story. And we got also some one-offs. We have a flash fiction piece. We've got the poem that you just heard from me. We've got an excerpt of graphic novels. And then we end with some works in progress by more of our emerging writers. And so I know it's not typical, but we're hoping that people, you know, understand it's a community effort. And we just want to show people that, you know, we're out here. There's more to Black sci-fi and speculative fiction than Black Panther. And we just want to show the breadth of talent and experience that we have here.
Yeah, I just want to chime in and say that I had the pleasure of meeting Audrey in February at an event at the San Francisco Public Library with the Afro-Surreal Writers Workshop. And this is the most amazingly talented group of people. I'm so excited to see this project moving forward. And, you know, Audrey is just a total badass. So keep an eye out for this one. It's really going to be special. And I'm just so happy you were able to be here, Audrey. Thanks for coming.
Thank you and Calvin for inviting me.
Okay, so we will move on to Natalie. Natalie Zina Walschots is here to talk about Hench, which is her debut and I believe is out this month. Is that correct, Natalie?
That is right. It is out on September 22nd.
Congratulations, that's so exciting.
Thank you.
I love a debut, I do. We have 3.5 debuts in this crowd, so
cool.
I will explain what that half a debut means later. I will sow the seeds of mystery. So about Natalie, Natalie is a writer and game designer whose work includes LARP scripts. I'm wondering how many people know what LARPs are, but if you don't, you can ask
I see some thumbs up from the nerds.
Yeah, nerds.
There we go.
I love it. Heavy metal, music journalism, video game lore, and less quantifiable things classified as interactive experiences. Natalie sits on the board of Dames Making Games, a space for queer and gender marginalized people to create games freely, where she hosts interactive narrative workshops. Excuse me, I need more coffee. She plays a lot of D&D, watches a lot of horror movies, and reads a lot of spec fic. She lives in Toronto with her partner and 5 cats. And it says here, this arguably is too many cats, but I don't think so.
Yeah, we like Brady bunched our cat populations together. So I had 2 and they had 3, and now
it's the cat
the world
bunch.
in which we live. So the odds of me getting photobombed by, yes, you can see the kitties. In fact,
oh my God, cats on Zoom. I'm gonna quickly say,
he is very.
Well, Natalie is showing off cats. Hello,
there
kitty.
are so many.
Aw.
Yeah, we have an Inky, a Blinky. Whoop, I've now screwed up my camera angle, of course, entirely. An Inky, a Blinky, and a Clyde.
Nice.
After the ghosts.
And I just want to say real quick, I want to turn this over to you, Natalie, since we're kind of tightly scheduled. I loved this part of the pitch. A young woman discovers the greatest superpower, for good or ill, is a properly executed spreadsheet. And I want to say for the record, yes, that is true. As the spreadsheet nerd in my company, yes. So anyway, please talk to us for a few minutes.
Absolutely, I would love to. So I'm just gonna share this presentation right from the beginning. So you no longer have to look at my face because, you know, I look like a potato wearing glasses. I am aware of that. So we're gonna hop over to, turns out heroes are bad, actually, how I was radicalized by data and how you can be too. So this is a relatively brief presentation. So my novel, Hench, is about a young henchwoman one of the downtrodden, overlooked, and usually expendable employees of supervillains. So it follows her sort of starting out as a, you know, even if you're trying to rule the world, somebody has to, you know, answer the phones and fill out your spreadsheets. She's doing that kind of, you know, soulless administrative work for some of the worst people in the world. When she has a unfortunately violent and life-altering experience with a hero, and during her recovery starts to look at the data surrounding heroes and whether they're actually doing good in the communities that they are ostensibly there to protect. And she in fact finds that the damage being caused far outweighs the good, at least in her opinion. So Hench, as you very kindly said, comes out on the September 22nd. It has gotten shockingly positive reviews, which I just wanted to take 1 second with, which has surprised, I assure you, no one more than me. So I guess thank the entire Earth for that. That's pretty great. But a thing that I wanted to talk about today is the math that Anna uses, and the sort of numbers that she encounters are in fact real. And it is a calculation that you too can apply to superheroes to learn that they are bad. So I in fact have her spreadsheets. So the scale that she uses in order to measure this damage is something called disability adjusted life years, or dailies. And they are basically the way that you calculate the damage of a natural disaster, which I feel is sort of the best, you know, way to kind of measure the impact of a hero. So when I was doing research for this book, I wanted to make sure that my assumption that heroes are bad for the Earth was in fact correct. So I applied this math, you know, that it includes everything from death to injury to property damage, and measures it in terms of human life years. I wanted to make sure that it was accurate, and lo and behold, it was. So I applied this math to some of the year 1 comics, which I thought gave a pretty good core sample in terms of heroic activity in the world. In Scarecrow's year 1 comic, we see, due to his activities, 0 are dead, 2 are affected, somebody's tied up and drugged. I'm assuming they might need some therapy because of that. Almost no damage. I'm super rounding up to a life year. So this is, you know, sort of this, and it's very much presented as like evil supervillain activity. Dr. Octopus's year 1 comic, again, we have 0 dead. We do have 13 affected. There are some injuries that he causes. There's a little bit more damage to a medical facility. So we're going to give him 10 life years in terms of impact. What I mean by a life year, by the way, is, you know, if someone is injured, that is the kind of like calculated what it costs to their lifespan. You know, so like if you have a severe break to your leg, that shaves some years off the end of your life. It's calculable. Death is obviously, you have died, so the number of years that your lifespan would have been that you have lost. So somebody who dies at 40, living in a place in the world where they should have lived to 80, the cost of that is 40 life years. And when it comes to property damage, we're talking about how long it takes somebody and sort of the average or median income in that area to earn that as a salary. So how many like years of work would it take to replace what has been damaged? So Dr. Octopus, Scarecrow, not very much. Then we move on to Superman. In one story arc, his cost is 183 human life years. So we're talking about cars totaled, a warehouse that's leveled, people who are evacuated and injured due to everything from demonic goo to, at one point, somebody being tied up with the bumper of a car, which, because your body is soft and squishy, is probably a pretty bad thing to have happen to you. Then, of course, there's Batman. The Batman kills people. Like, the fact that he allegedly doesn't is completely a myth. There is just no way on earth you can tell me that it's a spinal injury that Batman caused did not end up with somebody like dying of a bed sore 2 years later. It's impossible. I flatly refuse to believe it. So in this particular, again, we're talking about just the year one story arc. We have 5 dead attributable to Batman directly, 141 affected. One of my favorite lines in this is that there's just a toss away line from one of the Gotham PD that Batman commits 78 assaults over the course of 5 weeks. Truly spectacular amount of people getting dropped downstairs and severe head and spinal injuries, which, you know, bonking somebody on the head is actually pretty bad. Over $1 million in damages that can be directly attributed to him, which is a cost to the community of 408 life years. To represent this visually, this is the difference between heroic activity, negative impact on the world, and supposedly supervillain impact on the world in the same kind of story arc. In conclusion, heroes are bad. Thank you for your time, and I will stop sharing this presentation now. But that discovery kind of forms the backbone of a lot of Hench and spurs a lot of Anna's initial activity and her sort of quest forward to disprove the fact that heroes are actually heroic in the way that we think that they are. That's me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Natalie. This is totally up my alley. So send me an arc.
Nerds.
Publicists who are lurking in this, send me arcs. I want all the arcs. So, okay, well, thank you. That was so nerdy. I love it. Okay, so we're gonna move on to Greta K. Kelly, who is, we have a thing in common, Greta, which is that this is your first panel as a debut author. And this is my first moderation of a panel. So if I'm flailing, that's why I'm flailing. I'm sure you'll do way better than I do. But I'm excited for you to talk about this book because it is a debut and I believe it's coming out in January. Is that correct?
That's right, January.
That is so exciting. Congratulations. I'm so pleased for you. Debuts. And I'm gonna say that Greta is probably not a witch, death or otherwise, but she can still be summoned with offerings of Too Beautiful to Use journals and Butterfingers candy. She lives in Wisconsin with her husband EJ, daughter Lorelei, and a cat who may or may not control the weather. There's some badass cats out there. I'm afraid of these cats. And I saw the sort of pitch for the book online, and I loved a princess with a powerful and dangerous secret must find a way to save her country from ruthless invaders in this exciting debut fantasy. And it's the first novel in a duology. So that is cool too. So I would love to hear more about that. Greta, take it away.
So, just in time, I just recently got my arcs for the book, so I can share the little advanced copy image with everyone. Love the cover. But yeah, so Frozen Crown is coming out on January 12th. And like you mentioned, it's about a princess turned general who is forced to leave her embattled army and sail to a foreign court to beg its emperor for aid. But a different sort of war awaits her at court, where one wrong word could mean the end not only of her country, but her life. It is the first book in a duology, and both books are actually being published next year. So between 2 books and another baby on the way, it's going to be a busy year for me. And one thing I love about Frozen Crown is, although it's adult fantasy, there's heavy crossover potential. So it would easily fit in with readers who loved the Daevabad books or Poppy War or Crescent City. And I really love being in that crossover space because I think questions about who you are and what your place in the world is and how you want to move through the world, they don't magically resolve when you turn 20. I think the stakes just get higher. And I think that's definitely true for my main character, Askia. And watching her deal with those things is part of what makes her memorable. Going further, I think another really relatable thing that she's going through is trying to figure out what it means to be a strong woman. I think so many of us have this idea in our heads that strength is a purely physical attribute, like it somehow resides completely in her sword arm. which was probably why it was fun to yank her off the battlefield and plant her in this opulent court. Because she's young, she's hot-headed, she's impetuous, and knowing that her people are in such terrible danger makes her impatient in a way that's not always super helpful when you're trying to maneuver in the political arena of a nation that spans half the globe. So it makes her try to figure out what other ways she can be strong and learn how to show strength through her words and through this magic she's been suppressing her whole life, and also in the people around her. And as she's thinking about all these things, it kind of also brings up questions of what kind of woman does she want to be, and what kind of queen does she want to be, and can those two identities coexist? So it's a wild ride, and I hope that readers will find her to be as human and compelling and special as I do. As I mentioned before, this is a 2-book series. So the first one is coming out in January, and the second one is coming out next fall. I don't have an exact date on that yet, but I am working on edits for that book now. So that's always a special kind of fun to try and see what new adventures what trouble I can get my main character in and see her wiggle her way out of them. But I think it's going to be a really satisfying adventure for readers to go on. One other thing about me, I am one of the debutante ball writers for the class of 2021. So if you don't know what the debutante ball is, it's a website that's been going since about 2006, I think, and it follows 5 writers from across multiple genres through their debut years. And we do lots of informational articles, we do guest interviews from other authors, we do lots of book giveaways, and starting this year, we're going to be doing interviews on Instagram Live. So there should be a lot of really cool content coming your way. So that's me.
That is super exciting. I am just so happy for you. And I have to say that this book sounds like a blast. I was totally like, yep, I'm there. I would read this. I would.
Nice.
And I appreciate that you said it has crossover potential, because I was wondering about that, and that kind of situation that we're kind of learning about the kind of new adult, kind of where it sits there. And this sounds, would you say that this kind of slots nicely into that new adult?
Definitely.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was seeing too. So that, I think, is a great place to be. I think it's really a growing area, and it's an area that I like to read in, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
So yeah, congratulations again. And we are gonna move along to Mike Chen, who is here to talk about We Could Be Heroes.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Jill.
Hi, Mike, welcome.
I'm gonna do my screen share here.
I'm gonna introduce you first.
Okay.
I mean, you can put up the screen share, but
sure.
I'm going to tell people about you. And also, okay. I feel like we should have met. Have we met? Because we clearly travel in the same circles. You're San Francisco based, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Actually, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But if you went to any of the Writers with Drinks.
Oh, yeah.
So you might have seen me there.
Yeah, you look so familiar to me. And I'm just like, there's no way we haven't met. Okay, so anyway, quick intro. Mike Chen is a lifelong writer, from crafting fanfic as a child to somehow getting paid for words as an adult. He's contributed to major geek websites. He's a member of SIFWA and the Codex Writers, lives in the Bay Area, and can be found playing video games and watching Doctor Who with his wife, daughter, and rescue animals. Oh, what animals?
I have a greyhound that I always tweet about named River. Named after the Doctor Who character. And then I have 4 cats, and 2 of them might be walking in behind me.
Excellent. Sure. Yeah. That's always welcome. And I loved, just like looking at the pitch for this book, I loved a superhero and supervillain meet in a support group. And I am totally here for that. So tell us more, Mike.
Sure. So is my screen share up? Yeah. Okay, so, well, thank you for having me here, for having 2 superhero books on here. So I'm Mike Chen, and I wanted to say that first, Kaliba has been very supportive of me since my debut Here and Now and Then came out, and in fact was a finalist for Best Fiction Golden Poppy. And in this past January, I launched my 2nd book at Kaliba locations, Books Inc., Bookshop West Portal, and Copperfields. And so Kaliba has always had my back. And when things went into shutdown, a group of us local authors, and this, Jill, this you might have heard from this too, Charlie Jane Anders, Annalie Newitz, and Maggie Tokuda Hall, and some others, we formed a group called We Love Bookstores to host fundraisers for Bay Area bookstores. And it was our way of giving back to the community that we love. And I hope it helped. And I wanted to say thank you for always supporting this Bay Area native, you know, as we are in orange skies right now. So let's talk superheroes or wannabe superheroes. We Could Be Heroes comes out in January 2021, and we had a really great cover reveal at sci-fi.com. It's an adult novel about friendship, coffee, and cats for both the sci-fi and the crossover audience, as my other books have been. So the story synopsis: first we have Jamie, a supervillain known as the Mind Robber. So sure, he robs banks by wiping memories, but really he just wants to retire on a beach somewhere with his cat, gourmet coffee, and big stack of library books. And then we have Zoe, a superhero known as the Throwing Star. Not only does she use her speed and strength to beat up bad guys, she is also the city's fastest food delivery person, on foot, of course. When Jamie and Zoe accidentally meet up in an anonymous support group, they discover they have one surprising thing in common. Neither can remember who they were before waking up with powers a few years ago. And this bond leads to an unlikely friendship, and soon they find that the only way to uncover the origin of their powers and possibly save the city is to start trusting each other and maybe themselves. So that's the story, and here's the origin story of We Could Be Heroes. It actually started off as a short story that I sold called Anonymous. I wrote it in summer 2017, and when it came time to think of a new concept for my third book, I went back to this story, and I felt there was much more. And my agent bought off on the idea, so I started fleshing out the world and these characters in 2019. My goal as someone who writes character dramas against sci-fi backdrops is to really bounce around all of the different subgenres. So my first book was time travel, and then I went to post-apocalyptic, in a pandemic, which has been an interesting tale. And then now superheroes. It feels like a very natural next step. And where does this story come from in my mind? I'm very influenced by the media I'm consuming at the time. I've always been a really big comic reader and a fan of superheroes. This particular story was influenced by a lot of modern superhero TV, specifically Jessica Jones, Arrow, Daredevil, and Legends of Tomorrow, which in my opinion is the best show on TV right now, except for the terrible first season. You should skip that. I'm a lifelong comic fan. In particular, growing up, I read a lot of X-Men, Batman, and the Punisher. So I'm really familiar with the tropes of the superhero genre. And a lot of fun with this book was playing with those and turning them on their head while also still honoring them. In terms of fiction inspirations, Spoonbenders by Daryl Gregory had a really awesome take on superpowered people. Also Jade City by Fonda Lee and An Unkindness of Magicians by Kat Howard. And in fact, I inserted little references to Fonda and Kat's books in my book, just in case anyone wants to pay us to do an Avengers style crossover. I have planted the seeds right there. So there are two big themes going on with We Could Be Heroes. One of them is something that I find endlessly fascinating in fiction, the idea of a personal reset. If you lost all of your memories, would you fundamentally be the same person? And the second theme is friendship. So many stories have two characters driven by romantic tension, and that has its place, but I really think that healthy platonic friendships really need more representation. I wanted to tell a story of how two people could become friends, even though they shouldn't be, and the level of trust involved with that, something that exists beyond physical attraction. And so that friendship was really pivotal to writing this story. And it's kind of weird to say the characters have a natural chemistry with each other, but Jamie and Zoe, they just kind of bounce off each other. So that makes this, I think, the most fun and funniest book that I've written. I'd say it's equal parts character study, superhero tale, and then odd couple buddy comedy. And given the current state of the world, it kind of feels like we need something that's uplifting and fun right now. And so finally, I wanted to point out that when people often ask me on Twitter, my post-pandemic book came out, and how was I able to predict things like social distancing, hand sanitizer, and other terrible things of quarantine life? And I used to joke, well, if you see superheroes in the fall, you'll know that I'm onto something. And then a few weeks ago, there was a sighting of a man in a jetpack flying around LAX at 3,000 feet. So who knows at this point, and I'm sorry if that was my fault. So that's me. We Could Be Heroes comes out January 26th from MIRA Books.
Awesome, thank you. I feel like you and Daryl Gregory are kindred spirits or something there. Do you know Daryl?
I've met him in passing, and we've been at the same Locust Magazine parties.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really good friends with one of his really good friends, because the Bay Area sci-fi community is like really small.
Oh yeah.
But I've never, it's like we keep missing each other.
I'm gonna hook you guys up. You have things to talk about.
Cool.
I want this friendship to happen. Okay. So anyway, thanks for that, Mike. We're gonna move on to Sashi Foster, who is here to talk about ELADATL. Hi, Sesshu, how are you?
Hi, good morning.
There you are. Hello. Welcome. So glad you could be here. I'm going to give you a brief intro and to say that Sashi Foster has taught composition and lit in East LA for 20 years. He's also taught at University of Iowa, California Institute of the Arts, and UC Santa Cruz. His work has been published in many venues, including the Oxford Anthology of Modern American Poetry. His recent books are Atomic Aztecs, World Ball Notebook, and City of the Future, and he's based in Alhambra, California. And this book, I tried to find a short pitch for it, but what I kept coming back to was this little tiny thing that City Lights had come up with, which says, a much needed antidote for those whose minds have been colonized by screens and passive consumerism, which I just love. I think that had me right there. But please tell us more about the book.
Well, thanks to you all for having me here. Thanks to you all for your work as well. ELADATL, which purports to be a history of the East LA dirigible air transport lines, was meant to be a community project in a way. I wanted to make it a kind of open-ended writing project where numerous artists and writers could participate. And if you've ever tried to organize artists and writers, you know that's impossible. So anyway, it boiled down to a couple of us left standing, Arturo Romo and myself. And we organized community events and presentations in art venues, colleges, universities, and elsewhere. And the book purports to be a history of a collaborative project that doesn't entirely get off the ground. So thanks to City Lights for publishing it. Thanks to Elaine and Stacy. I'm gonna run through this PowerPoint. Gives you a feel for a bunch of the tropes that are in the novel. Oh, I also could mention that I'm in LA right now. The sky is a milky fog of smoke, not orange. I don't know why Bay Area gets orange and we get white. But throughout this novel, the skies are orange. And it was written years ago. And I liked orange, so I made the skies all orange. Anyway, all right. Our club meets at the Zepp Diner, of course, 515 Florence by the Goodyear plant. Jose Lopez Feliu might be wearing his fake beard and discussing his show on the recent Rupture Radio Hour. Reem El Qadi might be duplicating the gestures of morgue workers in Baghdad. And me and Zenzone are always talking about Harry Gamboa and Mario Ibarra. Our annual chicken and wine picnic of the air. Lucky winners get to swirl the Merlot and toss chicken bones overboard while paper napkins swirl overhead. Last year we almost lost a Chihuahua, but we found it later. it's complicated building these aluminum titanium auto-charging electric airships based on discarded German blueprints, Chinese ideas, and Cuba Libres. Plus, we have to locate abandoned warehouses full of usable tools and stuff. Luckily, it's easier since the free trade Republicans destroyed the world economy. There's empty warehouses all over the city. Here's what it looks like from inside. Deluxe passengers get to totter about the promenade and look down on rush hour traffic and gridlock all around the city as they casually swoop from downtown to Montebello, from Highland Park to Downey, with freedom of the air. I was in the Zepp Diner the other day talking about Harry Gamboa and Mario Ibarra to this guy, whoever he is. He told me his name, but it was late in the afternoon for me, and I wasn't paying attention. The waitress kept bringing plates of apple pie a la mode, fried chicken, and cottage cheese. I couldn't keep up. He said his goal was to stay in love and write the best novel ever. Sometimes we go fishing from the Dirigible on the weekends. Takes a long line, but you can snag great catches of giant grouper, barracuda, and snapper. Sometimes we can drop down to sea level, skim the waves, and send out a couple passengers on a line around their waist. They bring back everything from lobster to abalone, and we can drop the water ballast and zoom back into the sky with extra thrills, leaving them spinning in the air like voladores. We're busy readying new ships on different sides of town, expecting new lines that will outpace Caltrans development of subways. This, of course, is part of our master plan. This is the flagship, ELA Agnes Smedley, currently missing. We expect it to locate it any minute now. It seems to have been hijacked by some radical girl pilot trainee who flew off in a search for the legendary mythical sky city created by swirling trash and tornado debris exacerbated by global warming in the atmosphere. And I'll move to the last bit. There we go. We'll leave it at that.
Thanks so much, Sesshu. I wish we had more time. We just have 7 panelists, which is amazing. I'm trying to make sure that we have some time for a Q&A at the end. And by the way, those of you who are hanging out in the chat, and I'm enjoying your chats, please feel free to post questions if you have any. That would be super awesome. And I'm guessing that we're going to run over our hour, and I guess that Calvin or Valentina will tell me when I have to shut it down. But I'm going to just keep going because you guys are freaking fascinating. So so I don't think I introduced myself at the beginning real briefly. I'm Jill Roberts. I'm the managing editor at Tachyon Publications, where I have worked for 19 years. We're based in San Francisco. And I am immensely proud to have 2 Tachyon authors here. And we're going to talk to the first one in just a sec. And that would be R.B. Lemberg. Hi, R.B. Welcome. Oh, unmute yourself.
I need to unmute myself. Okay, how about
Hi,
now?
it's so good to see you. I wish you were here. RB's book is a debut, which came out last week, and they're supposed to be here now, and my heart breaks because that would have been super awesome. But the pandemic world goes on. So anyway, I'm happy that we get to talk to the community members today about The Four Profound Weeds, which is a book that is super dear to me and has been incredibly well received. Just in the last week or so, we've seen coverage on this magazine and BuzzFeed. It's been incredible. But I will let RB talk to you about that. Brief intro. RB is a queer bigender immigrant from Eastern European as Israel. Their stories and Israel. Their stories and poems have appeared in Lightspeed Magazine's Queer Destroy Science Fiction, Beneath Ceaseless Skies, Uncanny Magazines, and Sisters of the Revolution, a feminist speculative fiction anthology, which I consulted on, RB. I bet you did not know that.
Oh, I did not know.
I got an email from the editor saying, recommend stories. Anyway, RB's work has been a finalist for the Nebula, Crawford, and other awards for Weaves as their debut in their queer fantasy birdverse setting, which I'm going to let them talk to you about. So RB, please tell us more.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for having me at Calaba, and I'm so excited to be the first Tachyon debut, which is awesome. I love this press for so long, and it's just a great honor for me, and I've had a wonderful experience. So in the interest of time, I'm going to try to fit things into 5 minutes, but we'll see how it goes. I do not have a PowerPoint. I am a professor in my semi-normal life, so there are too many PowerPoints, but I will share with you my website, which I actually just finished working on, and it's even better than a PowerPoint because it has the same info. So let me try to do that real fast. And so this is the website that I've just finished working on for the Birdverse universe, which is my secondary epic fantasy secondary world, which has been LGBTQIA focused and focused on cultures and contact. And I've been working in this world for about 9 years now. I've written short stories and poetry, which have gone to become finalists for multiple different awards, which has been really exciting. And so Birdverse has a lot of fans. Many of the fans are LGBTQIA people. Many are allies, which is all good. Everybody's welcome to read in this world. The First Profound Weaves is the first one in print. Here's the cover for it. And the book is about two transgender people in their 60s who have waited for a very long time for their lives to begin. One has recently transitioned and the other has been transitioned very, very early in life, but has waited for a very long time also to inherit her craft, which is a magical weaving craft. And so now they must make a journey, which is very perilous, to learn how to weave from death itself. There are 4 different magical weaves that they can learn, and they need to learn the last one. And they do so in order to defeat an evil ruler who hoards bones and souls of rebellious women who dare to defy him. And this is a book that just came out, as Jill said, and already there's been a lot of praise for it. There were 3, I think, starred reviews from Publishers Weekly, Library Journal, and Forward, which is for indie books. And it was on BuzzFeed multiple times. It was Publishers Weekly top 10 for SFF, etc., etc. So there's a lot of different reviews from readers and reviewers who have been very invested in this world. Here's just some selection. There's many more people like Kate Elliott and River Solomon and others have been very invested in this book and given it just wonderful blurbs and reviews. So I also want to show you how big this world is. There's a lot of stories that already exist in this world and they're collected here. So I bring already a lot of readers who are familiar with this world and like it. One of the things that fascinate people about my world is, first of all, the fact that it's inspired by secondary Jews or history, very long history of Jews. And the world is constructed in such a way as to showcase my secondary world Jewish people, who are the Chana people, who are traders, and the women are traders and the men are scholars and mystics, and the genders are very segregated. And against that backdrop, I examine what does it mean to lead lives which are not normative. And another thing that always interests people, and I answer it in my frequently asked question. One is always people ask me about fantasy Jews because apparently it's a thing people want to know more about, which is awesome. And the second one is the magic that is based on the idea of deep names, which is a way of producing magic through language, which is really interesting to me because I'm a linguist. So I've developed this type of magic which is based in the mind and is activated through speaking or thinking a word. And it just becomes really elaborate and people geek out about this. And I think I'm up to 5 minutes, but there's a lot more. People love many aspects of this universe which has to do with world building. The Four Profound Weaves in particular, I think, has been praised not just for the world building, but also for the character development. We don't see a lot of older trans people in literature and older queer people in literature, and I think it's very important. Just as Mike said, friendships are really important and also underrepresented. This is a book about friendship between two older characters. So this representation is rare, and I think it's important. I'm really invested in it. This is also, here we go. It doesn't want me to talk anymore, but I'm gonna talk for 2 more minutes, maybe one more second. One of the things that people have been really into when it comes to this book is how much it deals with what does it mean to come out or come to your true self later in life. And the stories of grief and loss and joy and discovery and friendship and finding oneself that can be really powerful beyond a certain age when people tend to disappear from books. So this is my book. Thank you very much.
Thank you, RB. This is such a beautiful book, you guys. It's just, the outpouring of emotion and love for this book has just moved me. Day after day. It's just been, you go to Goodreads and read the reviews, people are just so touched by it. So anyway, I will move along, but RB, thank you so much. It was great to see you. I wish you were here. And we are going to finish up with Marie Brennan, who's here to talk about Driftwood. Hi, Marie.
Hello.
How are you?
Doing all right. I want to apologize to everybody for the fact that I've been yawning a little bit here. I know it sounds strange to say I woke up early for an 11 a.m. panel, but I am very profoundly a night owl, so we're kind of running short on sleep at the moment.
Well, I look like a ghost because my whole camera setup here is so borked. So, I think we're all kind of just doing great here. I'm super impressed with everybody, and this is so much fun. I'm so happy to be here. This is our half debut. This is the 0.5 of the 3.5, and the reason this is half a debut is because Marie has been writing in this Driftworld universe for a few years now, and this is the first full-length work in the Driftwood universe, which we were so excited to pitch Marie to do and have her agree to entrust us to us, because Driftwood has a huge fan following already, and we wanted to put it out there as a realized novel, and here it is. So thank you for allowing us to do that. Quick bio: Marie Brennan is a former anthropologist and folklorist who shamelessly pillages her academic fields for material. And let me just quickly say, I think academics are the most extraordinary world builders. Like, you guys just are amazing to me. These are some of the deepest, richest worlds, and I'm glad that you are, quote unquote, misapplying your professor's hard work, as you like to say, because I think you're applying it perfectly. Anyway, Marie is the author of the Hugo Award-nominated Victorian adventure series, The Memoirs of Lady Trent. Rushing now because I'm worried about time, but actually we're good. The author of the Doppelganger Duology of Warrior of Witch, the urban fantasies, lies in prophecy, and chains in memory, and many more. I'm going to just let Marie talk about that because she is a wonderful, amazing author. And Driftwood is a really, as I said, a cool setting. It's a post-apocalyptic realm where the apocalypse has not ended, and I will leave it to you to tell us more, Marie.
All right. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation, but I think I can manage to share some window here because Tachyon gave me a really pretty cover with just awesome typesetting. Driftwood is odd because normally I have a very clear sense of where an idea started and what caused me to have it. But with this one, about 16 years ago, I just had the idea of a setting where what happens is a world has some kind of apocalypse, like literally the world comes to an end, and whatever fragments of it survive that apocalypse kind of drift through the cosmic ether until they run into these fragments of other worlds that are all glommed together in a place they call Driftwood. And so it's a setting that is very much about liminality, because it's all of these different broken fragments of worlds jutting up against one another. And also about entropy, because when they get there, they continue to decay and they get smaller and they move inwards, sort of in this like grinding process toward a central area they call the crush. Which sounds kind of bleak, I know, and in some ways it is, but at the same time, the publisher's weekly review for this called it Hope in the Face of Apocalypse, which is a little more timely than I meant it to be when we started planning this book with Tachyon. It's each of the short stories that I was writing in the setting, involves different issues of how it is that people deal with being in this kind of situation, and what are the things they choose to hold on to? How do they adapt to this situation, or in some cases, not adapt so well? And then the thread that joins all the stories together is a character they call Last. That's not actually his name, but he is the last person from his world. His world itself is gone. He should be dead. He doesn't even know why he's still alive, but he appears to be immortal. There's actually a bit of a tinge of Doctor Who to him, though I didn't consciously think that, because I didn't know any Doctor Who stuff until after I had begun writing in this setting. So I just kind of hit on the same vibe, I guess. It wasn't a direct influence. He shows up in everybody's story with them relating to him in different ways depending on the circumstances of the story. So when I talked to Tachyon, my original thought was just to do a collection of the Driftwood stories, and then I would write something new to be in the collection. And along the way, that morphed into a fix-up novel where there's a frame story. The thing joining it together is the idea that a rumor goes around that Last has actually died, that this guy who everybody thought was immortal has actually died. And so they're coming together to try and figure out what happened. And in the course of it, people tell the stories of either their encounters with Last, or, because a lot of time has passed, the encounters that some ancestor of theirs maybe had with him. With then the new story that I intended to write, which is actually about a cult that believes he is the god of Driftwood. And so they worship him as a god, which he has opinions about. And from the start when I began writing this, Driftwood had fans from the very first story, and I had people asking me, are you ever going to write a novel in this setting? And my thought for the longest time was no, because a novel is like a big coherent unit, and Driftwood is not about big coherent units, it's about fragments. So writing a fix-up novel actually turned out to be the best way to write something novel-sized about Driftwood, because the form of what I wrote is kind of the setting itself, that it's these pieces brought together into a larger whole. It's done remarkably well in terms of reviews. Tabbing over here, got starred reviews from Publishers Weekly, Kirkus, Booklist. I've just been really startled by how well it's done, not because I didn't think it was good, but I just think it hit at a very kind of appropriate time, because it really is about, okay, how do you keep going, and how do you decide what's important to you and what to hold on to when it feels like things are falling apart? So, like I said, a little more timely than I meant it to be, but on the other hand, it's I've gotten a number of people saying that it's really kind of spoken to them right now, which is frankly an honor.
Yeah, I agree. I think the timing on it could not have really been better. It just really hit right, and people do seem to respond to it on that level. And I mean,
don't
like that.
I would have happily taken it not hitting at the right time in exchange for not having these things happening.
Yeah, yeah. I know it is a silver lining, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it has something profound to say about this moment. So congratulations on the amazing and your 0.5 debut in Driftwood. I hope there will be more. And that is everybody. So I'm looking in the chat and I don't see a lot of questions. So I think I'm going to ask a question to wrap up. And then if anybody else wants to jump into the chat, maybe we can fit in one more. So my question is, to each of you, what is your favorite thing about your book? Just like 1 or 2 sentences, just tell me like the elevator pitch. Like, I love this. So we'll just go in order. Audrey, talk to me about Ancestral's futures and what you're kind of, what's starting that organization kind of, what sparked that for you? I know it's obviously your community, but was there any particular moment when you were just like, this has to happen?
Yes, I think we have an incredible range in the group. Over the years, some people have had some success and have, made their first sales and they're entered the professional market. And then some people are newer and are more emerging. So the thing I love about this anthology is that we haven't just limited it to the folks that have made paid professional saleable, contributions. We're actually showcasing the range, and we're taking excerpts from zero drafts from some of our more, I hate the word amateur, but I get tired of saying emerging all the time. And also too, just to be a platform to show that, there are some Black folks here in San Francisco that are writing speculative fiction. I don't know, I sometimes hear that people aren't aware of that, and it always takes me by surprise, like, why wouldn't we be? But yeah, that's the thing that I really love, is that we're being inclusive and we're not saying, okay, only you who've had this sale, please contribute that to this anthology. Like, we're not being fancy, we're just keeping it real, and everyone's welcome, and we just want to showcase the entire community across the spectrum of where you are. So, and it will be some people's first publication, and I think that's okay.
It's really exciting to me, and having heard some of these authors read, and it seems like there's such a gulf between Oakland and San Francisco, like just coming across the bay, like all of a sudden there were all of these people that I was like, well, how do you not know this person? And it was just really cool to just see that one BART ride. Not that, I expect to be on BART anytime soon, but how much that seems to be kind of cross-pollinating. So I'm excited about that. Okay, so Natalie, tell me something fun that you're excited about your book. I know you covered this, really well in your presentation, but I want just like a really quick, like, tidbit. Can you think of anything? I'm putting you on the spot.
Sure, no, absolutely. I love this. So there's a lot of like heavy stuff, right? Like there's a lot of, stuff about data science and the cost of violence, and the book is full of body horror, and there's definitely like a lot of really, really intense stuff, but it's really funny. Like, I promise, guys, it's actually hilarious. Yeah. And so I think that's probably my favorite part, is that there's as dark as it gets and as weird as it gets and as complex as a lot of the relationships are, it stays funny and it retains a sense of humor that I worked really, really hard on, and that I'm very proud of how it turned out.
Yeah, the debuts are so exciting, and I love a good superhero story, and I especially love when that's turned on its head. Like, that just to me is, I will read all of the books in that subgenre. So, yeah, all of them, give them to me. Greta, hey, I actually have a specific thing for you, which is, I feel like there was something on your website about when your book was accepted. Am I remembering that correctly? Was there like a blog post or something that you did? Maybe a while back. What I want to hear from you is just what I want to hear about you was what it was like. This is a debut thing that I never get enough of. What was it like when Frozen Crown was accepted? When you found out that it was going to be published, like, what was that moment like for you?
It's always so surreal. The entire process feels like it's happened to someone completely different. From, talking to my agent and talking with her. I was actually on vacation the first time we spoke, and I was so nervous to meet her. We were on vacation in Italy. I was so nervous to meet her that I didn't sleep at all the night before. And as a result, I was so sick when we were touring the Coliseum that the entire time I was thinking, I will not throw up on a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And it's just been unreal since then. It's such a big dream to even get an agent and then to sell one novel, but then to find out that it's going to be, your entire series all in one go. It's just been indescribable.
Yeah, I can't, to sell the series all in one go is just like, that's the dream, I think. So yeah, I'm so happy for you for that. And I can't wait to see this book. It's just so fun and like so much adventure, which, you know, yeah, it just sounds like a page turning wild ride. Is that like, I got page turner off of this.
That's cool.
Yeah, for sure. Mike, hey.
Unmuted. Hello.
Let's see. I'm trying to come up with specific questions for you guys. What was doing Writers with Drinks? You've done Writers with Drinks, correct? Yeah. So what was that like for you? Describe, because I feel like a lot of people here may not have gone to Writers with Drinks, and it's such a super fun environment. And I just want to hear like a tiny bit about like what your experience there was like.
So Writers with Drinks is a monthly event in the Bay Area at a place called the Makeout Room in San Francisco in the Mission District. It's been running, well, it's on pause right now, obviously. And it was, I think for like 15 years or so. It's been a really long time. Mm-hmm. It's hosted by Charlie Jane Anders. And Charlie Jane like comes up with these incredible introductions for people where mine was, so I was there for my time travel book, and she wrote this thing about how like people from the future were like trying to take me because I wrote the greatest book of all time, and it was just, it spins off. And so like it's like this 5-minute riff. I can't even summarize them, but if you look on YouTube, people have filmed. There's like, I filmed mine actually. Pun Shepherd, who is here right now, I see her in the attendees. Hi, Pun. I made her film mine because we were sitting in the booth at the time. So it's at a place called the Makeout Room, which is hasn't had any income, obviously, since COVID. And I know they've done various fundraisers, and Charlie Jane has talked about on Twitter how if the Makeout Room cannot survive, then we don't know if Writers with Drinks will return. So that's something that as a writer community, I know that seems like, you know, this is a Bay Area venue and there's so many things to support, but as Writers with Drinks brings in people from everywhere. You know, if you stop by in the Bay Area because you're doing an event, then Charlie Jane will try to get you into Writers with Drinks. So if you can support the Makeout Room in the Mission District to help keep this event going on once COVID lifts, I think the book community is so much better because of it.
I agree. The Makeout Room is literally 10 minutes from my house. And were things going according to plan, both Arby and Marie would be there this coming Saturday night.
So much fun, yeah.
Yeah, it's
the best. It's like the great people, and you know, Charlie Jane is just she rules the world. She's so awesome.
She does, and I would just urge like any Kaliba members or fans of genre to keep an eye out and come to that event when it comes back, because you will see the most amazing range of writers. You know, Charlie Jane always books people that should be on your radar or just were coming to your radar, as well as established superstars, and the blend is really special. Plus the events are fun, people drink, and it's loud and boisterous. It doesn't feel like a boring book reading, it's like a party. So yeah, fun times. I will see you all there someday. Sesshu, hey. Are you there? Hi. Sorry, I'm putting you all on the spot. I apologize. But this is fun. Okay, so here's where my mind was going. Early on, Tachyon published a steampunk anthology. And it was a really fun thing. It was back when steampunk was like barely heard of in the mainstream. And I was just, you know, when I was reading the beginning of your book and learning more about your process, I was just curious to know like about if there are steampunk or diesel punk influences for you, and how you feel like that. I mean, it seems like there are, but also like how did that inform your work, and is it something that you want to explore more in future books?
actually, I'm not really that familiar with a bunch of steampunk stuff. I mean, I did see the Japanese anime movie called, I think it's called Steam Boy. But sort of outside of that, I don't read a lot in it. Most of the work that influences the narrative of the book is actually the visual art of Arturo Romo, who's a visual artist. He did the final image in that PowerPoint where there's a vegetal dirigible station with a
so gorgeous
anchor on the LA River. And so his artwork is throughout the book. And sort of my challenge in the writing of the book was to integrate the surreal aspects of his visual vocabulary into the narrative aspects of the story. And that's really my my main influence, along with the artists that I mentioned in the slideshow are also some of them friends of mine or acquaintances that I know, and their work, you know, kind of their visual work and conceptual work influences the storyline as well.
Yeah, I feel like you're carrying on a really amazing tradition that still has a lot of rich veins to be mined. So I just think it's a really cool addition to that subgenre. And in fact, it sort of forges its own path. And as you said, like not directly influenced, but still very much, I feel like it should be a part of the literature of that subgenre. So, okay, RB, hey, hi again.
Hi.
Hi. So I guess what I want, so Annalie knew it, so keep coming back to Bay Area folk, because, you know, that's where we are. But, you know, Annalie called your book the anti-authoritarian queer mystical fairy tale that we all read. And I want you to just say something about what that meant to you. Like, I felt like it just encapsulated the book so beautifully, because it kind of hit on all of the main points of the book. And I was so grateful to Annalie for doing a better job of writing copy than I can. So could you say something about that? Just a little.
So first of all, I love that. And I love what Annalie had to say about the book, because as you mentioned, I think it perfectly hits on kind of the main points of what the book is doing and what the reaction was to the book when it, even before it came out, when it was still in ARCs. It's definitely very queer. Birdverse is completely queer all the way down, as I like to say. It's also very heavily involved with trans and non-binary representation throughout. This book is a trans book. So as for mystical, I do think that there's definitely something about it for people who love a bit of a mystical or religious type feel, because the heroes, as they progress in their quest, I think there definitely is an element of the gods being involved, and not just as in a sense of worship, but also in the sense of the deities and the humans' involvement in producing and creating a reality which is desperately hoped for, but which might be hard to reach out to, especially in an authoritarian or dictatorial setting, which the two protagonists find themselves in a situation where they must confront a tyrannical ruler who is very much into the arts, but is against the artists that produce the arts. And so it's kind of a very interesting dichotomy between a person who desires to collect, who is the villain and is often called the collector because he collects the arts, but not only does not care for the lives of the people who produce the arts, but is actively harming and even killing them. And so on one hand, there's this very grim reality, and the book becomes very dark. And on the other hand, there's this hope, and the book definitely ends on a very hopeful place, even though it's not an unambiguously everything's going to be wonderful from now on, but it's a place from which we can dream about resistance and imagine what resistance, and queer resistance in particular, can look like, and what is that we're committed to do. So, and as for the fairy tale aspect, I do think that my Birdverse short stories have different tone to them, but I'm drawn to folklore. I went to UC Berkeley and I had a PhD minor in folkloristics. I studied with Alan Dundes. I don't know if, how many of you know his work, but he was amazing and he was a great mentor. And so I am very much into folkloristics and world folklore, and I have been since I was very small. And so for this one, I wanted to experiment a little bit with fairy tale tropes. Like I really wanted to experiment with the figure of a very wise, but kind of maybe not very positive mentor or donor figure, who is Ben Sret, who is the ancient weaver and the aunt of one of the protagonists. And she's very ambiguous. I mean, kind of like Baba Yaga is in some ways, where definitely can be both guiding and positive, and also very negative and scary. So, and also the overarching structure of a quest, which they make, is a fairy tale structure as well, which was interesting to me because fairy tales often have very young protagonists, and these were older protagonists, and it was really important for me, as I said already, to explore what it can mean to have a rite of passage, a journey, a quest, an accomplishment, and hope as an older person, no matter what that means for each one of us. And I think a lot of people had very emotional reactions to this book. I get them every day, and it makes me very emotional to get them. Just today, somebody pinged me to say I sent it to my therapist. Because the therapist has a lot of LGBTQIA clients, and and I get those. I sent it to this person. I gave copies away because it does something to people, because it's just so moving for me to see that, because I had no idea what the reception would be. But I'm just so happy that it's what it is. And of course, not everybody is going to connect with every book. This is a lyrical book, and I think a lot of mystical feeling is coming from its lyricism. I started out as a poet, and I love poetry.
I think, sorry, Arby, I just wanted to say real quick, I think that it's one of the things about our debut authors here is, I think it's really like this rite of passage, like where you start to see reviews for your books online, and you're like, oh my God, like these people loved my book, but this person hated my book. And then that person gets in your head and is like a little evil homunculus, like trying to control you. So don't listen to the haters. It's important to believe in yourself. And, there are always people who are just so petty. And, we use NetGalley, and on NetGalley, they have a policy that you are not allowed to post reviews of books that you did not finish. And I read those constantly. I'm just like, why would you say, like, I just couldn't get into this 2 stars? It's like, rude.
There's
rude.
Not a lot of haters. I think
no, there haven't been.
It was overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah,
and, but you're
sorry.
right. I'm a debut author.
yeah. So relax, you guys. You're good. You did great. Marie, I need to get to you. Hi.
There we go. Unmuted.
You get the final word.
Oh. Now I have to live up to something here.
Tell me the final word. Tell me about, just real quick, about Last. Like, it's very ambiguous who Last is. He's this trickster figure, and I always think of him as this, he just, nope, I'm not going to do it. You tell me about Last.
I mean, in some ways that's hard, because there are certain stories or certain bits in stories for me that will just kind of come subconsciously rather than being a thing I consciously build. And those are usually my better ideas, but then I'm left with something where I'm like, I don't know the answer to XYZ any better than you do. When I was talking with Jamie Go, my editor, about what to do with this book when we were putting it together. And one of the things we agreed on is that no, absolutely, this book should not answer the question of why did or does Last survive well past the point when he should be dead. Like, that's a question I honestly don't have an answer to, and I'm happier that way, because I feel like it would get much less interesting if it would just flatten out into being something very banal as soon as I gave an answer to it. So he's kind of a mystery to me as well. I know his emotional state well because he has difficulty dealing with the expectations that people have of him and the things that they want from him, and he gets tired of going on, which is what some of the stories touch on. But yeah, I can't tell you why he is who he is.
I like that he's like an anti-hero, if that could be a thing, like
he wants to help people, but after a while he stops wanting people to be like, oh, save us, and he's like, I can't.
Yeah. I feel like there's there's quite a metaphor there that I'm appreciative. It's like, help yourselves. And on that note, I don't see a lot of questions, so I think we can wrap up. But I just want to say you guys are such an astonishing group of humans, and I'm so delighted for you with your projects. And I know we're going to be hearing really great things from you